Yo, what up guys, it's Easy Game here. I've had a lot of people come into my stream, ask me about Necrolord Affliction, ask me about the build, what I do, what are my talents, how do I do what I do. So I decided I'm going to make a YouTube guide on it. I've seen a lot of YouTube guides already on Necrolord Affliction. A lot of things are incorrect, some things correct. So I decided to just go ahead and make my own, and I'll let you guys be the judge. So the most important thing when it comes to any class and spec in Shadowlands, in my opinion, is your build, your talents, your legendaries, and your spec, obviously. So I'm going to start off with the spec. Very important here. This is pretty much what you play for these talents. This is what you play every game. You never change these. I've tried Absolute Corruption. Trust me, it's not better than Wrath of Agony. Wrath of Agony is just better. It's not countered by Revival from monks. It's just strictly better. I've done the testing. You can believe me or not believe me, but I'm telling you Wrath of Agony is better. For honor talents, this is where it becomes a little bit more flexible. You want to play Shadowfall because it's integral to the spec. You can play Casting Circle here on most maps. That's what I play personally, and then you swap that with Shadow Rift, which is really good on FC maps, really good on Eye of the Storm. Some people play it on other maps. I usually don't. Rapid Contagion is pretty good for Night Fae Affliction. It's not as good for Necrolord Affliction because you don't have Soul Rot to benefit from it, so I pretty much never play Rapid Contagion. And now another important thing that people forget about sometimes, conduits. Very important here too. This conduit right here is the key to the spec as well. You have to have this conduit in. I usually swap it out for Corrupting Leer because Corrupting Leer is not as good as it is with Night Fae, because again, just like Rapid Contagion, you don't have Soul Rot to benefit from this, so you can't refresh Soul Rot with Dark Glare, which makes Dark Glare less of a powerful of a cooldown. So I feel like this is probably the best one to swap out. You obviously don't want to swap out the Agony conduit, Rolling Agony. That's just the best one, and I think I get a lot of Malefic Rapture damage, so I like to keep this one as well. This conduit's pretty much useless. Yeah, so that's pretty much the only choice, is swapping out Corrupting Lair. I usually play this tree right here because Carver's Eye is such a powerful soulbind. It gives you so much mastery. It's absolutely insane for Warlock. I generally play this one every single map. There is an option to play this one as well. I don't have the conduits in for it because I usually don't play it. But if you're having trouble with DKs, you can play this one right here. You can port, and the DKs are always playing double grip, so you port, you walk back out, you bait their second grip with a Fleshcraft, and then bam, you're completely out of the fight. They can't grip you back in. You get to play safe for a little bit. So that is an option for you if you're having trouble with DKs. And let's go back to the build. You want to balance pretty much haste, mastery, and verse for Warlock. This goes for even Night Fae. Crit is just by far the worst stat for Affliction, especially after they remove the crit chance from Unstable Affliction. It's pretty much a useless stat now. The only crit I have is from my pants, which is unavoidable because you want to wear the 4-piece as Necrolord because you do cast a lot of Shadowbolts. So you get a lot of value out of this sometimes if you're lucky. Sometimes not so much. You want a nice balance between haste, mastery, and verse. I generally don't like to go below 30% verse very much. Some people do. I've seen people go down to 18% verse and just max their mastery to the roof. I can't really afford to do that because people like to hit me in RBGs because I'm a huge threat. So I generally will stay around 30% verse personally. But if you feel like you're not going to get hit as much and you can get your damage off, then sure, you can go lower, stack your mastery if you have the gear. Mastery is very powerful as Affliction. And like I said, you get a lot already from your tree, the Carver's Eye that I showed you earlier. It's a lot of mastery there. So you might want to even be better off going off with extra haste, because haste is very powerful. I like to be around 30% haste. I think if I could, I would go to 35% haste if you had a nice PvE ring with high haste. 35% haste feels really nice. I don't have a PvE ring, so I can't afford to do that. And then generally with your enchants and your gems, like I said, just try to balance out your stats here as much as you can. I would never go below 30% haste personally. It just feels much better having at least 30% haste, 30% verse, and then as much mastery as you can after that. And there's two builds that I primarily play in RBGs, and I'm going to show them both to you right here. First one is the one-shot build. This is what most people come into my stream and ask me about. It requires this legendary right here, Malefic Rapture. Increases the damage of your Shadowbolt by 35% for 10 seconds. Stacks 3 times. Important thing to note is that it stacks 3 times. You don't want to ever use your Shadowbolts unless you have 3 stacks here with your Decimating Bolt up. So the whole point, I'll show you on the target dummies real quick here. Stack this up, get some corruptions out. Really don't need the UAs, but I'm going to put them up anyways. Alright, I got a proc here. Cast my Decimating Bolt. Let's get my 3 casts of Rapture up here. And let's go another dot. And boom. There we go. Boom. 53k, 53k. There you go. And I got a proc for my 4-piece, just to show you how useful it is. Alright, and then I got another one. Let me show you another one. They're all instant cast. That's the strength of this spec, is once you get it rolling, you can't really stop the one-shot. It's an instant cast. Your spell priority in RBG should be keeping up agonies and try to keep them at 18 stacks as much as possible. Refresh the duration on the ones that are about to fall off. 18 stacks is a huge chunk of your damage, and if you let them fall, you lose a lot of damage. You also want to keep corruption up on as many targets as possible. I generally try to keep it up on at least 3 to 5 targets. Definitely want to keep it up on your UA targets to maximize your rapture damage. And if you're playing the one-shot build, you want to make sure that when you cast your Decimating Bolt, your Shadow Bolts go on a target with as many dots as possible, because it increases the Shadow Bolt damage based off of your conduit. And Phantom Singularity does work for this, so Phantom Singularity adds another 22% damage on top of your already original 3 dots to your Shadow Bolt damage. Another thing that people don't seem to understand is exactly how Decimating Bolt works. So the way Decimating Bolt works is who you cast the Decimating Bolt on, that is what procs your buff. So you see how this target enemy right here is lower than 100% health. This means that when I cast my Decimating Bolt on this target, I'll get a bigger buff than the 100% baseline. You see I have 131% buff. The lower health, the higher percent buff I get, which means my Shadow Bolts will do more damage. So if you can, you want to cast this Decimating Bolt on a target that's either gonna be low health when you finish the cast, or is already low health and you feel like it's gonna stay low health, because you want to get the biggest buff possible. Also, a thing to note that some people don't understand as well about this, especially healers on the enemy teams, is that casting Decimating Bolt doesn't mean that the bolt is coming after. You see I casted the bolt right here. I can hold these charges for as long as I want, for a whole minute in fact, right? I can hold these for as long as I want, and then whenever I want to use them, bam, bam. So a lot of times I'll press Decimating Bolt, and the healer will press their cooldowns, like they'll dome or they'll pain step the guy Decimating Bolt, and I just hold on to the charges, because he just wasted a defensive for Decimating Bolt, which does 0 damage. And then I wait for the defensives, and then bam bam bolt. I don't have the one-shot build on right now, but the Sacrolash build. There we go, one-shot. That's an important thing to know when you're playing this spec in RBGs. The Decimating Bolt hitting a low target is huge, huge damage. If you can get somebody at 1% or below 10%, your bolts are going to be massive. I've hit upwards of 75k on a normal unmodified target, not an FC, just a normal target. I've hit up to 75k, no buffs, no zerk, no nothing. The damage is absolutely nuts. Also, a thing to note, the conduit, this conduit right here, like I said earlier, it's a very, very important for your bolt damage. And if you understand what the conduit does, it deals more damage based off of how many dots you have on the target. So you don't ever want to Shadowbolt a target that doesn't have dots on it. I'll show you exactly how little damage it does right now. So I'm going to cast my bolt on the low health target. So I should have big bolts here, right? The low health target. But I'm going to cast it on the one with no dots up. Watch how little damage it does. 31k. Pretty low, pretty low. Now let's see how much damage I do with the target with 4 buffs up. Right here, 4 dots up. 61k, almost double. That conduit doubled the damage of the Shadowbolt. It's very important that you don't cast a Shadowbolt on something with no dots, unless, of course, you know, they're at 20%. It's going to kill them no matter what, but generally you want to cast it on something with all the dots up. So that's the first build. The other build I like, I pretty much played this build on almost every map except for Silver Shard Mines and Temple of Katmagu. The reason I don't play this build on those 2 maps is there's a lot of movement. It's really hard to ramp up and get the one shot, especially Temple. You can get some on Silver Shard Mines, but I generally find it very hard on Temple to ever get one shots. People are constantly dying. It's constant movement. People are running with orbs. It's really, really hard to get 3 stacks up and ramp it up. It requires a lot of casting. So I generally play the other build, which I'm going to go over right now. Pretty much the same talent choices here. Again, you can swap Casting Circle for Port. You can even play Rapid Contagion with this build because it is a lot of dot damage that you're focused on. But like I said, I still like Casting Circle for the Raptures. It's the same stat priority. You can play a little bit more Mastery here and lose a little bit of Verse because it's a little bit safer of a build. You don't have to cast as much. But this is with Sacrolash and then Necrolord for the Unity, obviously. So this is a Sacrolash build. You play Sacrolash. This whole build is focused around getting your corruptions out and getting your agonies out on everybody that you can. The corruptions will do so much more damage with this Sacrolash. It's insane how much damage you can do with this. This will do Slightly more damage overall than the one-shot build, but obviously you're losing the one-shot. I generally still play Shadowfall because even with this build, you still can hit 25 to 30k Shadow Bolts when you cast a Decimating Bolt on a low health target. Sometimes even higher. I've hit 40k if the Decimating Bolt's on a really low target. So even though you're not playing the one-shot build, this build actually still has pretty high burst potential with Decimating Bolt and Shadow Bolts. But overall, it's a lot more of a patty spec for movement, high movement maps. And obviously, reading what this legendary does, it's pretty self-explanatory what you need to be doing differently when you play this build. You want to be getting more Curse of Exhaustion up than normal because they're going to last a long time as long as you keep your corruptions up. And as I said earlier, the whole goal of this build is just to maximum pad. You're not going to have as many one-shots because you're not playing Malefic Wrath legendary. So you're just going to be constantly trying to minimize your casting, keeping your agonies up, keeping your corruptions up, and when you can cast, you cast Rapture to extend the duration of those. You still want to keep your UAs up, but in between those, you can press your curses and they're going to last a long time with this legendary. It's actually pretty powerful if you can have Curse of Exhaustion up permanently on their healers, Curse of Tongues on their lock, and sometimes even Curse of Tongues on priest. It actually is very powerful against priest, believe it or not, because a lot of the priest healing rotation is global for global. Curse of Tongues slowing their globals is actually huge, lowers their healing a lot. It's very annoying to deal with as a healer. This build, you can also take Amplified Curse instead of Casting Circle. It's very powerful with Sacrolash. You can put a Curse of Tongues on an enemy Warlock. You can put a 70% Curse of Exhaustion on a Priest and just keep your corruption up and it stays on them forever. It can be very annoying for the enemy healers. And also, the Curse of Tongues is very annoying for an enemy Warlock. And also, Curse of Weakness makes them unable to critically strike. So if you put this on a Hunter or a Warrior with the cooldowns, they just won't crit. It's also very powerful. So this could be a good option other than Casting Circle if you feel like you can get away with it. I think that pretty much summarizes both builds. If you guys have any questions or you want me to go into something more in depth, don't hesitate to hit me up in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you're looking out for more RBG guides and content. And don't hesitate to hit me up on Twitch, twitch.tv/EasyGameL. The link will be in the description below. And until next time, I'll see you guys there.